their mechanizations toil in foundries remote. For what purpose? We must set watch upon them, baiting our snares with the worms of profit.
Boy, if you don't... What's up, Dank homies? Meme Sage here, and Khora versus Vauban. That is the subject at hand. But before we get into the subject at hand, recently I've been making a lot of changes to the channel and how I do my videos, this, that, and the third. And I don't know if you've noticed, but we have a brand new intro, that's the thing, and I'm going to start putting a thank you message for my Patreons because I really haven't been giving my Patreons the recognition that they deserve. But I'm going to start doing that in the beginning and or end of my videos depending on the type of video that it is. And if anyone else wants to show some support through Patreon, whether it be big or small, either way it is helpful because it does get me ramen, and I love ramen. But if you go down in the description, you can find a link there. Now, recently the Vauban player community and the Khora player community have been bumping heads a lot. Now, I'm one of the more prominent faces you see playing Khora, so a lot of that comes directly to me, and I feel obligated to protect the Khora player community. I will fight for you, okay? I understand the power that Khora has, but all these other players, they just don't. So I decided to take action this time. I am tired of being on the defensive. I decided to be on the offensive. I went for the top. I went for the leader of the Vauban players, Rahetalious. Khora is better than Vauban. Sit down, scrub, is what I said to him to get his attention. He replies, "Nani? Fight me, because I'm not here to play no games. I'm here to play video games." But little did I know, Rahetalious likes to fight dirty. So to wrap this thing up, Rahetalious invites me to something called the Fayette KO Challenge. The rules for the Fayette KO Challenge go as such: no invisibility, no invincibility, no tanking abilities allowed, no camping, and no familiars. 2 players enter MOT survival, and the first person to run out of all of their revives loses. Now, I've never done this challenge before, so I'm not used to these kind of rules, and when I use Khora in MOT survival, I camp. Like, I almost need to camp, but one of the rules are you're not allowed to camp. So unfortunately, I didn't win. But after the mission, I decided to analyze the evidence. I decided to start asking questions like, if we were able to do whatever we wanted, no limitations, would Khora be able to beat Vauban? And is Khora generally better than Vauban in every way? Now, comparing both frames is actually pretty easy because they're both extremely similar, but I'm going to be as unbiased as possible. Now, the first thing I want to compare, and quite possibly the easiest thing to compare, would be their damage. Now, this is going to be really simple and very quick. Vauban doesn't do any damage with any of his abilities, so it's not even worth talking about him in damage. But Khora pulls off an immense amount of damage, like crazy amounts of damage. If you look at the stats at the end of the mission, Khora ended up having 70% damage while Vauban only had 30. And that's because Khora has something that not many frames in the game actually have, and what Khora has is instantaneous burst group damage. There's no other frame in the game other than Mesa that can do damage to a large group of enemies instantaneously without any kind of setup. Not to mention that damage can be spammed over and over and over again. And the more times you spam it, the more damage you do because it's also affected by the combo counter of your melee weapon. But the next thing I want to talk about, and quite possibly the most important thing to compare the both of them with, would be their CC, or their crowd control. Vauban has an ability called Vortex. What this ability does is you throw out a ball onto the ground, it comes up and it forms a said vortex, and what that does, it will suck in enemies to the center of that vortex, ragdolling them. They can't attack you, and the only thing that really damages those enemies that are sucked into the vortex would be you, any of your weapons, or your allies' abilities or their weapons. Now, Khora has a very similar ability called Ensnare. What Ensnare does is you cast it on one singular enemy, and then enemies that are near that middle enemy will all get sucked into the center of that enemy that you cast it on. Now, all enemies affected by Ensnare will take 2 times more damage from Khora's whip, as well as 2 times damage from Vanari. Now, both of these abilities are very great with centering enemies. If you want to bring all the enemies into one singular point so that they're easier to attack with something like the Pox or even Khora's whip, then both abilities will make that super easy. But one thing that Vortex has over Ensnare is that Vortex can be cast and used instantly. You can throw it wherever you want and boom, you have a giant sucking ball of Vortexness. But Khora, on the other hand, you have to wait till you see an enemy, cast it, and then wait for the slight delay to activate to then start pulling in enemies. But don't write off Ensnare yet, because Ensnare has a lot of things over Vortex. Like, for example, Ensnare has a much larger radius. It can reach up to like 27 meters of just pulling enemies in. That is some massive crowd control right there. It even uses half the amount of energy that Vortex uses, and it's easily recastable. On top of that, it even doubles the damage of your whip and the damage from Vanari. I mean, the whip already does insane amounts of damage, but you boost it even more. In fact, you even boost it by way more, because if you're using gas damage, everything gets procced with gas and everything gets reprocced with toxin. And one of the major things is that Ensnare will work on enemies that normally Vortex won't even affect. Like, for example, Stalker Acolytes. If you were to cast Ensnare on a Stalker Acolyte, the Stalker Acolyte won't move. Even works on bosses and even index enemies like Aditor. You know that Bursa that nothing really affects or can stop? Yeah, Ensnare stops it, as well as Lockjaw and Soul. Now, whichever one you like, that's all up to personal preference, but from what it shows, I would say that Ensnare is way better than Vortex. Now, next I want to talk about is survivability and team support. Now, Vauban doesn't really have any direct team supporting abilities, but he does have amazing survivability, because one thing that Vauban has over Khora is that Vauban can just throw his Bastilles wherever he wants and make the enemies just not do anything. That right there is mega survivability. But we'll talk more about Bastille in the next topic, because right now I really want to focus on survivability and team support. Now, Khora has her Vanari, which is her Kavat. Her passive is that she has her own Kavat, which she can also use with a Sentinel or another Kavat. Now, what this Kavat can do, it can attack enemies, it can disarm enemies that are attacking you or your teammates. As well, what I mainly want to talk about is the healing factor. Vanari can also heal you and your allies for a lot of health a second. For my build, I was healing about 98 health a second. Now, Khora also has the ability to use the fourth ability. I'm not allowed to actually say that word on YouTube, but she can use that ability to provide crowd control in order to keep herself alive as well, but that also denies Khora of being mobile. It's really great for being in a camping situation, but not good for being mobile like Vauban can do, which he can just bullet jump around and keep on throwing Bastilles. So when it comes to team support, I gotta give it to Khora because of her massive healing, but when it comes to CC for survivability, Vauban does take the case. Which those 2 points are exactly why Rahetalious won in the 50 KO challenge, because A, if you remember in the rules, we're not allowed to camp, so Khora's survivability with CC would be absolutely useless because that would be against the rules, as well as my Vanari kept healing him for 98 healing a second, so that really didn't help my case. Now, this is probably the biggest argument between Khora and Vauban, and that is Bastille versus Khora's fourth ability. Now, let me just go ahead and say Khora's fourth ability kills Bastille. Now, there's so much about this ability that you may or may not already know. Like, for example, you spawn a giant dome, and in that dome there are many triangles. Every single one of those triangles is like their own Bastille with the same range. It's also like Nyx's Chaos ability, where she makes all the enemies confused and start attacking each other. Well, the dome ability, what that does is enemies that are affected by the dome will be dangling in the air, but the enemies that are not affected by the dome, they will be targeting the enemies that are dangling in the air. So it's like a mixture of Nyx's Chaos and Loki's Decoy. And on top of that, if you want to increase the amount of damage that they take per second, you start slapping them with your Whip Claw. And if you hit one enemy with your Whip Claw, all the other enemies around it that are also affected by the dome also take damage. I gotta give this one to Khora, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a Khora main or I'm biased towards Khora. No, this is my unbiased opinion. I gotta give it to Khora. Now, when comparing them in a general standpoint from the whole Warframe Khora versus the entire Warframe Vauban, you can't really say one is just better than the other because Vauban is a pure CC type Warframe, while Khora is a CC healer damage type Warframe. Now, of course, whatever Warframe you play is entirely up to you and your personal playstyle and your personal preference. But really, this entire video was just for food for thought. I don't think that Vauban players are just completely inferior to Khora. Okay, I kinda do. But do I think Vauban needs a complete rework? Not a complete rework, but I think he needs some abilities just completely changed, like that trip laser ability. What ability is that? Just like, it should be like a wall instead of just a little laser. Just make like a laser grid wall or something. And what the heck is Vortex? What's the point of that? Just like, use Bastral. Vortex is kind of lame. But that's going to be really it for this video, and I want to thank Rahetalious for featuring me on his channel. I didn't even know he was going to record. I was really just messaging him to talk smack and just, you know, have fun, just, you know, trying to break the ice with some family-friendly feud. And if you're new to this channel, well, welcome to the Dank homies. I'm glad to have you. My name is Meme Sage, also known as Nero. And, you know, I'm a pretty nice guy, you know, you don't have to be afraid of me. I feed Cocoa Puffs to the local dogs in the neighborhood. I sell coupons to orphans, you know, I think I'm a pretty nice guy. But that's gonna be it for today's video, and boy did this video take forever to make. I tell you, man, I switched the entire program I was using to edit videos, which is probably why this video looks better than most of my other videos, because now I'm using Adobe Premiere Pro instead of stupid Sony Vegas. But again, that's gonna be it for today's video, and if you guys enjoyed today's video, go ahead and leave a like, and if you haven't subscribed yet and you want to become part of the Dank family, then go ahead and do so, and I will see you guys later. Peace and much love.
Don't change, even though life ain't the same. Say, don't change, don't change. Life gon' make it happen anyway. Say, don't change, even though life ain't the same. Say, don't change.